BMW Motorcycle Owners of America present the Short Wheelbase Podcast. With members in all 50 states, Canada, and across the globe, the BMW MOA invites you to ride inspired. Learn more about membership benefits, including roadside assistance, tire hazard protection, and more at bmwmoa.org. The Short Wheelbase Podcast is also brought to you by Boxer 2 Valve, supplier of quality OEM and aftermarket parts and specialty tools, and by Air Support BMW, offering premium driveline rebuilding and performance enhancements for your air-cooled BMW.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 22 of the Short Wheelbase Podcast.
Wow.
22, Daren, and you're back.
You're
back
am.
After your long adventures in work and other distractions.
Yeah, a little hiatus, which is fine. It's good to be back with you.
Yeah, it's great to have you back on the show. So folks, this week, the theme is really the recap, looking back on the rally, the MOA rally, which I literally just got back from not yesterday, but the day before.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll chat about that. Our garage updates will kind of focus a little bit on some of the things that Daren finalized on the green machine to get that ready. Let's see here. Featured bike, we're going to go through the irregularities that are on the green machine that we were trying to do a contest at the Air Central at the rally and didn't really go as planned. More on that to come.
We'll talk about that, yes.
But we'll talk about that and what irregularities there were. We'll just do a general recap of the rally, the ride there, and all the adventures and misadventures I had getting there and back. And we'll wrap today with a clip that I'm putting together of all the 360 cam footage that I took riding there, riding back. Took some footage while we were walking around the rally itself. I also took some phone video and pictures and things like that. So at the end here, we'll wrap up with that, so you can check out what it was like. But before we jump into all that, as I've mentioned in the past, I'm trying to revisit some things and bring things full circle. And in this one here, we're going to talk about back in episode 14, we had a fellow named Jess that we featured his really purpose-built scrambler. You guys might recall it's a white big /6 tank, high pipe. He's ridden it in the Vintage 1000 and many other off-road races and things like that. But really cool bike. He reached out initially because he was having some problems with his bike slipping out of gear and was trying to find someone to help because he'd talked with Nathan at Boxerworks and they were struggling to figure out what was going on. So I wanted to report back because about a week or so before the rally, there was a vintage bike gathering show, if you will, here in the Denver metro area. And I was planning to ride up there with Matt from EME, from Euromoto Electric. And so I was sitting there waiting for Matt to pull up, and he pulls up and there's another rider behind him. And as it pulls up, I'm like, that bike sure looks familiar.
Yeah.
And it turns out it was Jess. He was just kind of torn around the West. He threw his bike on the back of his rig and had some time off between jobs and was out and about, stopped in at EME just for a visit. And Matt said, hey, come on with us, come to this show. So got to actually meet him in person. We took him up to the show, checked out some bikes, did some canyon riding afterwards, which was super fun to have him tagging along with and kind of showing him the local routes, which was pretty cool. And he reports that the bike is fixed. He went through a whole number of things in the drivetrain, rebuilding and repairing them. The folks over at Boxerworks have been very kind in letting him just kind of pull the bike in, put it on a lift and wrench away at it.
That's kind of their MO there. Yeah.
Yeah. Kind of a shared garage or shop situation. So, the only thing that he was able to figure out that fixed it was he actually Nathan gave him another transmission to just put in to see if it would work, and it fixed it. So, so there must be something wrong with the transmission he had, or some kind of interaction between that transmission and the rest of the bike. But when he was out here, he was actually still running Nathan's transmission, which I thought was pretty cool. That Nathan was just like, yeah, here, take this and go do whatever you want with it.
Well, that begs the question then, if I had a bike that wouldn't run or start if I went down to Boxer Works, I was like, hey, my bike's not starting or running. Would they give me another one?
Yeah, I mean, maybe. You never know. I'm told there's a lot of bikes and parts in there, so maybe they just would hand you a new one.
Yeah.
Or new one. Anyway, so just wanted to come around on that and kind of give an update. Like I've mentioned before, if we featured you on the show in the past and you have updates on your bikes or any updates in general about Airheads, just reach out to me. I'd love to revisit with you.
Follow up. That's right.
Yep. Follow up. Exactly. So with that, let's jump into the garage updates.
Okay.
Obviously my focus for the last couple of weeks has been getting ready for the rally. So I haven't really been wrenching much on my bike. But like I said, I have been riding it, which has been great. The one thing that I was really doing to prepare for the rally, as I mentioned last episode, was just packing everything, which turned into be a huge pain in the ass, if you will. Trying to get 5 days worth of clothing,
you did
camera
pretty good.
Gear, and
you did good.
Yeah, Daren, you saw how I got it all in there, but it was a tight squeeze, and I had to repack the bag I think 8 times.
Well, that's the way it goes
while we were on the trip. But that's kind of what I've been up to. I was hoping, Daren, you could kind of give a little bit more detail on what were the last minute items that you did to the green machine. What gear did you kind of prepare me with on the bike? Yeah. Before handing over the reins for the ride.
So I rode it to work a few times. Made sure it was running. I wiped it down with a wet cloth, and I checked the fluid levels. That was about the extent of it.
Nice.
As far as setting you up with some spares and things like that, since that bike is still a points bike, I threw in a full set of extra points, advance unit, all that kind of stuff I had. Don't know if any of them worked, but if what was in there failed, you had at least something to put on there to try to get it to work again. Thankfully, you didn't need that. Put in a couple tubes and an air pump, and as you found out, I put in 2 19-inch tubes, not a 19 and an 18, but we can report a 19 will get you by in an 18-inch wheel. And so maybe that's it. So yeah, that was as far as setting that bike up for you. That didn't do a whole lot. But let's talk about some of the issues you had with it. We will say the bike ran fine, motor, transmission, electrics, all that stuff. But the back wheel turned out to be a little bit problematic.
Correct. Yeah. To reiterate your point, the bike ran flawlessly. I mean, it was smooth as butter. The whole ride, shifting was great. Brakes felt great. I know a lot of folks really like to kind of poo-poo on the single front disc, but compared to my conversion with with the drum brakes, I thought it stopped on a dime.
Well, it just goes to show it's all relative.
It's all relative, right? Yeah, I was making the joke all week at the rally that I have to kind of like send my bike a letter a block ahead of time so that it knows I'm going to stop at the end of the street. Anyway, so yeah, it ran great. We had a great ride out there up until about, I think we were 40 minutes away from the rally, and pulled away from a stoplight and flat tire on the back. And as I mentioned last episode, I was riding with Brandon Reams, and thankfully he was in my headset and he's going, flat tire. And so pulled it right over. There was a gas station there. Was able to just push it into the gas station. Found a nice little curb where we could hang the back wheel off the curb so we could get the wheel off without having to remove the front wheel. And yeah, we dropped a 19-inch tube that was in the saddlebag that you gave me in the back on the 18-inch wheel. And I think we did it in under an hour, and we were pretty proud of ourselves.
Yeah, that's pretty good. I'll attest to that. Well done.
Yeah. So seemed like everything was all good. We rode the rest of the way to the rally and kind of put us a little bit behind schedule. So we didn't get to check in that night, but we went right over to the hotel that the MOA had graciously lined up for me. And, I was riding the bike around the parking lot without my helmet on because we had unloaded everything. I just wanted to put it in a little bit of a better parking space. And I could hear a strange noise coming from the back. And so we parked the bike, put it up on the center stand, and started checking everything that we had just worked on. And we noticed that there was just a slight wobble in the back wheel. And initially we just kind of attested it to, hey, we just did this repair. We only had the little 5 or 6 inch, I think it's a 22 millimeter wrench for that yep. axle bolt. Mm-hmm. And we tried to torque it the best we could, but it's hard to know exactly what you're torquing it to. So we figured we'll go in tomorrow. We'll check in at the rally. We'll go right over to the Air Central section, because we knew they had a lift and a torque wrench and a bunch of tools, and we'll torque this up and it'll be fine. So that's what we did. Get in there, torque it all up, make sure everything's good. We had plenty of advice and guidance on making sure that those numbers were correct.
Apparently so.
As Air Central is known.
No shortage of opinions.
No shortage of experts, correct? And we just could not get that wobble to come out. And so with the help of a couple of the guys there, we ended up kind of tearing into the bearing stack a little bit and realizing that the wedding band spacer on that wheel was just a little bit too big, and it wasn't letting the bearings seat into the races. And so at that point we, had to come up with a plan. And thankfully, Greg, the air marshal from Tennessee, chimed in. Hey, I just live down the road here, and I've got a spare /6 wheel that I know is good. I could bring it to you guys, and you could just slap that on to get you back home in a couple of days. And we opted to do that. We could have sat there with the torch and pulled the whole stack out and, sanded down the spacer to the right size. But it just kind of felt like we were taking a little bit too much risk on when there was a perfectly operational wheel sitting there for us.
Yeah.
So yeah, Greg was super cool. He went and got us that wheel. We slapped it on, which means we did another tire change to put the existing tire on the wheel that Greg brought us. And that solved the problem. I ended up just buying the wheel off Greg, because I thought, well, why try to courier this wheel back from Memphis to the Nashville area? And he graciously sold it to me for a great price. And eventually that wheel will get back to me and probably end up on my /6 build.
That's right. So you bought it ahead of time.
Yeah. So I figured it's just an investment in the project I have at home.
So yeah, let's talk about the wheel bearing issue in the stack. So we talked about this on the program a couple times. Both /6 wheels I have on the R90S and on the Green Machine were original /6 wheels. I'm told, and also a test case, anecdotally and proven, that those wheels are prone to cracks, especially the rear wheel around the spoke humps, if we want to call it that. And so this happened to me once on my 90S. I bought a wheel from an eBay seller called Moto Dojo, who always has good parts. And so that's a wheel that I've got on my 90S. And then lo and behold, last winter, I'm going over the Green Machine rear wheel, same thing, about 4 or 5 hairline cracks in the rim on that same spot. Bought a complete rebuilt wheel from the same seller. And so a couple things on this. So the problem was, you mentioned there was a slight wobble and the bearings weren't seating correctly with the spacer. So when I got the wheel, I'm trying to remember, I don't think it had the top hat spacer in it, which a rebuilt wheel, when you've got the bearing cap on there, when with the 4 or 5 Allen bolts and stuff, it should already be seated in there. Correct?
I believe so.
Yeah, that's Brandon went over this with us. And let me just say, always, you don't want to take advice from me. I'm not a how-to or instructional kind of guy, because I make mistakes quite frequently, and this was one. So the top hat spacer was not in there, but I had it, of course, on the other wheel, and apparently I put it in the wrong sequence. And And what that did, two things. One, it allowed, however, I can't remember exactly where I was in the sequence, because it's been a while. But anyway, Brandon pointed this out to me that it goes under the lip seal, apparently, the last outer seal. Anyway, however I had put it in, it was, when the axle was torqued down, it was causing enough compression for that bearing to seat properly, because I never noticed any free play or wobble in the wheel. I would have noticed that right away.
Yeah.
And so I guess what happened, however I had put that on, when you guys took the wheel off, Brandon was probably like, what the hell is this? Why is this top hat? I think it was might have been on the outside of the.
Yeah, it was. And I haven't pulled apart /6 wheels before. So when I saw it, I just put it, I just thought that was how it went.
I did that. So that was an oversight on my part. But then secondarily, when that wheel was built, that top hat spacer should have been in there to begin with. And I probably, I think what I did, if I'm being honest, I think I looked at another bike I had and saw it was on the outside and just figured that's how it was. So I did not check that bearing stack, so I made a mistake there. But it was not apparent until the wheel came off and Brandon was like, wait a minute, this isn't right. I guess he put it back in properly. And then that's when we realized it wasn't put together and delivered to me with the top hat in the proper place. And then, of course, the wedding band and the spacer and the correct setup was not there. So good news is I've got parts, I've got shims, I've got wedding bands. I can take it all out, get it back together correctly. I am going to have to go back and check my math on the other wheel that I put on.
Yeah.
So if you ride my 90S, Nick, you don't get a flat tire and find the same problem. So we've got that to go to as well. So long story short, the bearing stack was not shimmed and put together properly when I bought the wheel. I exacerbated that fact, and then here we are. So Good news is you made it home.
I made it back. Yep. And like I said, we opted to go with the other wheel, mostly because I just wanted to make sure that I didn't come back and have ruined your bearing races in the hubs or anything like that.
Yeah, I would have been kind of pissed about that because it was a new wheel and rim. Hold on.
Right. But we got back, and that's the important thing.
Okay. Sorry about that. Yeah. So it all worked out fine. I mean, like I said, when we were talking about it, I would have rather, if you had time and know-how in the tent just to get it set up and put it back in, but that just wasn't possible.
Yeah.
So it's all good.
Yep. Yeah. It was, I think, and maybe this is a good segue into the kind of my recap of the rally itself is, rolling in and having some issues with the bike. That kind of really ate into the time that we had to actually experience the rally. We spent a good portion of the first day there, dealing with issues and getting the bike put back together just so I could even ride back to the hotel that night. It kind of compressed our timeline in terms of what we were able to do. In addition, one of the things I really went out there with a mindset of I was really hoping to try to interview, folks a little bit younger, right? Like Airheads, my age group and around my age group, because it's something I like to feature on this show that, Airheads are obviously very popular amongst the older folks, but like there's a lot of us younger guys too. And one of the things I wanted to get to was I think it was the opening ceremonies for the custom bike show, which we ended up missing because of some of this. And so I throughout the course of the weekend, I felt like I was just chasing after these younger guys, and they were either just leaving or or not where I thought they would be at all times. Which kind of it's a bummer, right? But I also think that the demographic it skews a little older, right? Rallies do skew a little bit older in their demographic. Sure. But what I want to make clear here is I think, and this is something I thought about a lot on the ride back, a lot on the flight back to Denver, is that the MOA is taking huge strides to kind of bring in us younger guys, right? Like the custom show this year was a new thing, which was directly put in to kind of bring in a younger audience. The music that they're bringing in, they're trying to, bring more young folks in. They had a stunt show that, felt very much like something you would have seen at the Hand-Built show or the One show.
100%. That's right.
And, they're taking these strides. And I mean, just supporting this podcast in and of itself is another effort that they're putting out there to bring in
Did they have
audience.
a tattoo booth?
I didn't see a tattoo booth.
Okay.
No, I might have to talk to Ted about that one. I need another one right here. So, this is my long-winded, rant, I guess you would say, of, the motorcycle industry is having this issue across the board, right? Like bringing younger people in, getting people interested. I think a lot of folks my age probably look at a rally and say, who cares if I don't go to that, it's not for me. But I'm here to say that they're doing what they can to make it for us. And the only way that they're going to keep doing that is if we keep showing up. So if you're a younger rider and the rally shows up next to you, the next year it's in Vermont. So if you're up in the New England area, make an effort to get there. The more we show up, the more that they're going to keep doing these events and catering them more towards us. We're not going to see that shift by just not showing up. And, events like this are the bread and butter for these clubs. And if we're not showing up and interacting, then they're just going to go away. And I really do believe that it's a great event. It's a place where, you can interact directly with vendors. Revzilla was there. There was a ton of Airhead specific vendors there, or just BMW vendors there. There's a lot of benefit of being able to walk up and pick up that helmet you've been oogling online for the past 6 months, try it on. Sometimes
that's a good point. Yeah.
I live in an area where I can get to a lot of shops, but some folks don't, right? So it's a great place to interact with these products, the vendors, the mechanics, the builders. Get out there, get to these things, because they're going to go away if we don't. So that's my rant. I'll call it there.
I'll buy it. Well said.
But it'll benefit motorcycling in general. So so that's what I wanted to say on that. Like I mentioned, I didn't get out there and interview as many people as I wanted to. One, I don't think there was as many people there that I had hoped in that age bracket. And two, just, kind of chasing my tail a little bit with some issues on the bike kind of made that tough. But, I mentioned the stunt show. That was really fun. The wall of death was wild to see. I was pretty impressed with the police bike rodeo. I never thought that would be worth watching. If you told me, go check out the police bike rodeo, I'd probably just laugh it off. But it was amazing to see these guys whipping these huge BMW bikes around. And hold the phone.
Okay.
I did a modern bike demo.
And
rode a 2025 R1250R. Brandon rode a modern bike as well. The most modern bike I've ridden by at least 20, 25 years. And I can say they are fun.
Oh, yeah. Indeed.
So yeah, go to a rally, check all this stuff out. Send feedback to the MOA, let them know what you want to see at these things, and they're going to answer back. So, I think that's about all I've got on the recap, Daren, unless you've got anything. I was going to say, I know I talked a lot about this with you back in Memphis. So if I missed anything, let me know.
Nope. Good observations. I can't find any fault with what you've said. It's been years since I've been to an MOA rally proper. The last rally I went to was Todd Trumbore's, which, really, maybe it was a sanctioned event. I have no idea. And prior to that, the only national rally I've been to was Toronto back in 2001.
Wow.
So
it's been
a while. I don't know if I'm going to make it to Vermont next year. That's a bit of a haul for your boy here. But I do hope to get to a national soon, and maybe even a regional one. I know I'm going to try to get up to the Airheads Tech Day I think it's November up in Missouri. That's regional and close to me. So that is an event I hope to get to this year.
Yeah. And that's a good point too, right? There's more options out there than just the National Rally, right?
That's right.
There's ABC Tech Days, there's, a ton of different events that you can get out to. And especially in the Airhead world, like the more we can get out to these things and the younger guys can get out to these things, the more we're going to start kind of interacting and kind of lowering the average age a little bit, which again, I don't mean to sound ageist or anything like that. All the older dudes that we met at the rally were super helpful and really great. I love some of the stories I heard.
Oh yeah.
It is great to get some of the history of, the ABC Club and things like that was shared while I was there. But on the flip side, us younger guys we have to start making the new history. We have to be there to eventually be the old guys telling these same stories in 30 years.
Good point.
So, okay, that's the general recap of the rally. Like I mentioned, at the end here, I'll play a little video of some of the things that I saw and experienced while we were there. I mentioned that we're not going to have a featured bike this week, but we are going to talk about the green machine and the irregularities.
That's right.
Now that you've heard the story of what we were dealing with on the green machine, we were trying to host a competition at Air Central where folks could spot the irregularities and win some prizes. Unfortunately, the whole first day I was there, the bike was on the lift, and everybody was just very focused on helping. So they weren't really paying attention to much else. And then the second day, I was running around trying to catch up on all the things we missed. And there was actually 3 other bikes in Air Central kind of in various states of disrepair. And so there really wasn't anywhere to put the green machine inside Air Central.
Kind of got lost in the shuffle.
Yeah, it all got lost in the shuffle. But I figured since we talked about this on the show last time,
we did,
and we've been alluding to this, we may as well actually
go
go
over
through
the list
and let people know what was wrong, not wrong, the irregularities, if you will.
Yes.
So, and Daren's going to be kind enough to send some photos, so we'll be popping up photos here of these actual items. But we kind of split things up into three groups: what was wrong with the frame, the body and paint, and then the wheels.
Got it. All right, give me the first one.
So the first one for the frame is the incorrect or questionable frame ID stamp on the right side of the down tube.
All right. So we'll pull the picture up here. And now I'm not a frame stamping expert, nor am I an expert on if there are irregularities or differences, rather, with what's on an EU frame versus a USA frame or elsewhere. But if you look at just the way the numbers are stamped here, one, they seem to be the wrong way around. So they seem to be sort of flipped, clockwise, vice versa, whatever you want to call it. And then secondly, you'll notice it's just the engine number and not the model type. Usually on that down tube and on the stamp, you'll see the serial number. In this case, it's a 7-digit EU number. So it's different than a USA number. But it usually will say R75/6 or RS or something like that. So when you look at this VIN stamp, it's questionable. Then the other thing that was a clue for me on this, you can tell that it had been sort of repainted because the paint on top of the VIN number is a little bit gloppy. Is that a professional word? Gloppy?
Yeah, thick maybe.
Thick. Yeah, a little thick. And so this is one of these things where, when I was first looking at the bike, I had so many other things on my mind. When I was in Germany, it just went right over my head. But when I got home after riding the bike and was going through it, that was one of the first things that stood out to me. So the VIN stamp. Secondarily, you'll notice in this photo here that there's no VIN plate.
Right. And that's the second thing that we were looking for in the competition.
That's right.
Yep.
Which is an aluminum plate that's riveted on the side there. And I think that might have been actually on the, I may be speaking out of, I can't remember which side of the frame it's supposed to be on. Either way, it's not there. Okay. And then third on the frame, there were some mysterious holes drilled in those gussets where the down tubes are there next to the steering head bearing. Now, I think the VIN plate would have been on the left. but I'm not sure. I can't remember. Anyway, but there were 2 holes still on the frame where the VIN plate would have been riveted. But as you'll see in the photos, there were also 4 other holes mysteriously drilled in the frame. And when I got the bike, these were filled with like a countersunk screw. So it was almost like something could have been screwed in there.
Almost like a riv nut kind of thing.
Exactly. And so when I was going through the bike, I just popped those out. They really served no purpose. The final thing on the frame, and I think, or no, not the final thing. This is yet another one. But in that area, this is another thing I noticed right out of the gate was on a /6 frame, there would be a bracket sort of right in the center that the horn would attach to. On the frame on this bike, that bracket, non-existent. And what the previous owners did was just drill and tap a hole in the crossbar, the cross member there, under the steering head bearing. So I saw that and I was like, wait a minute, what the hell is going on here?
Right.
This is just not right. The final thing, which really clued me in, that this, in fact, was even a later model frame. Now, the horn bracket would have been one clue right out of the gate.
Yeah.
Because the later model frames, the horns were on the side, not in the front there. There is a provision for mounting the rear master cylinder on the inside of the swing arm. So obviously this bike was crashed, as we mentioned, and what you didn't see and what we didn't picture and I didn't make note of too was also the subframe was bent on this bike. So this bike was, I think it was rear-ended, it was crashed. They saved the engine, the tank, and we'll get to this also, the rear fender. But the whole frame and swing arm was replaced, maybe even the forks, probably so. I didn't check the date stamp on those. So those are the things.
Those would be a lot harder to figure out.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So all those things I mentioned on the frame. So the serial number was sketchy. There were holes drilled in there, no VIN plate, the horn mounting, and then also a provision for a rear master cylinder. And Nick, the thing that I really questioned was how did this happen in Germany where they basically just replaced the frame without a salvage title? I mean, you can't do that here.
Right.
And that was one of the strange things was, when I've made this joke, I think we talked about it. I was like, oh yeah, well, I'm buying a bike in Germany. The Germans, nothing fishy, nothing sketchy going on over there. It's not like I'm buying it from Billy Bob in West Virginia. Pardon me, Billy Bob in West Virginia, if that sounds horrible. But, I mean, you know what I'm saying.
Right. Well, I mean, I think I mentioned this when we were in Memphis, right? The German, was it the TUV inspections that the bikes have to go through? Yeah. I mean, I've obviously never run a bike through a TUV inspection. However, my understanding of them is that they're very strict. I mean, like custom bikes almost don't exist in Germany because of these TUV inspections.
That's exactly right.
So, the fact that this was able to get through and not raise any red flags is pretty amazing.
Yeah. And you know who managed to purchase it?
Yours. You did.
That's exactly right. Let me find the jankiest /6 I can in Germany and buy it.
But to reiterate, the bike rides wonderfully.
It does.
I had so much fun riding it.
Yes, it does.
It was a great machine. It makes me really excited to finish my /6 project.
Yeah, exactly.
And so yeah, that was the issues with the frame.
The frame. What's next?
So moving into the body and the paint, the first thing that we have here on the list is that the front fender and battery covers were repainted.
That's right. So I mentioned this to you when you pulled up, or when I got the bike out and we were sitting out in the street in Memphis. I was like, well, here it is right here. It's one of the things that you can, if you look closely, the paint color's off. Now, in the photo, in my defense, in the photos, when I was looking at the bike online, you could hardly tell. I mean, an online photo would not have brought. I didn't notice it. Let's just say.
Well,
that.
and I said to you in Memphis, I looked at it and said, well, now that you told me that, I see it.
Otherwise, you might not.
Had you not mentioned it, I would have never noticed. I mean,
Yep.
It was a pretty good match.
They did a good job. Yes. Whoever did it, it was close. It was a little more metallic, modern metallic, which, of course, that's to be expected. But here's the thing that clued me off to this. So when I was trying to mount the saddlebags on the motorcycle at Steffen's place in Heidelberg, I just happened to look back at the rear fender and saw that there was all kinds of fiberglass patchwork on the fender. And then also, how the fender, we'll see this in the photo, but it lines up against two little tabs behind the battery box. And it's pretty close. So if the battery box is here, the rear fender's like this. First thing I noticed when I was back there messing with it, the fender was like 3 inches away from it. I was like, what the hell is that? And then I saw fiberglass repairs on the back of the fender, which led me to believe the bike had been in a rear end accident. Or I was joking, this bike might have belonged to Liberace because it was rear ended. That's a tasteless joke, but I thought it was pretty funny.
That's all right.
Anyway.
We'll let it slide.
We'll let it slide. Sorry about that. I had to get that in. Anyway, so, yeah, I noticed the fender had been repaired, and then I was like, oh, gosh, okay. Now I'm looking at the paint, battery covers, front fender. The pinstripes on the fender, they did a pretty good job. There's a little one, the thick one was a little too thick. Mm-hmm. But it squeaked by me initially in the photos, and it wasn't until I realized that the rear fender had actually been repaired that the paint color discrepancy caught my attention when I was first with the bike. So there you go. Repaired rear fender and repainted front fender and battery covers. What's next?
Right. Before we jump onto that,
yes.
The other thing that you mentioned that makes the rear fender repair kind of obvious is that they, instead of putting the mud flap, the rubber mud flap mm-hmm. on the inside of the fender, they mounted it on the outside, which I think we determined is likely because they were kind of trying to hide.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because if you look at how that mud flap is mounted a lot on Euro bikes, it's on the outside.
Oh, so that is how it's
I've seen it on the outside on a number of bikes, and now don't get me wrong here. It might have even been, if it was, it's one of those things where it was going to be a dealer installed option. I don't think the mud flap would come installed from the factory back then. And I've seen it both ways, even on bikes that might not have been damaged or repaired. The fender is sometimes on the outs, or the mud flap is sometimes on the outside. Now, I always thought that was kind of a silly look.
Yeah, I mean, that caught my eye for sure.
Yeah, and when I've added that to other bikes I've had, I always put it on the inside. It just makes a lot more sense. But you're 100% right. Regardless of what the preferred or approved method might be for mounting that mud flap, this one was definitely put on the outside to cover up all the fiberglass repair.
Well, and looking at the fiberglass repair on the inside, it wouldn't have even sat flush in that fender with all the added fiberglass in there. No. So probably outside was the only option.
Yes, that's exactly right.
And so, moving on to the very last thing in the wheels category, we have that the front wheel was date stamped 177.
That's right. So that's
new.
A pretty good indicator, right? Now, I looked up the VIN number on this initially after I got the bike home, just to double check some stuff, because after I had realized, all right, there's some funny business going on here, I'm going to look up this VIN number and just see, is it even a /6? Who knows? So when I did, it showed me a production date. And I'm going by memory here, but roughly between 4 and 6. So April and June of 1976. That showed it. That was in that particular range. That VIN number. EU VIN number. So I was like, okay, all right, so that's legit. And it did show it was a 75 /6. So the engine is legit. the number they stamped on the frame to try to match it, that was legit. But then I looked at the front wheel and saw 1/77. So again, I was like, all right, well, this bike's been crashed. The front wheel has obviously been replaced. That's from later. That's probably from a /7 run, maybe.
Could be.
Yeah. And the metallurgy apparently was strengthened for the /7 run on those wheels. So in a way, I was happy to see that it was maybe
a little bonus, actually.
Yeah, a little next generation on the front wheel. So there you go. All of those things did not catch him in the photos. Of course, when I was buying the bike, I'm asking the guy, is the paint original? Oh, yes, Daren, very original. Has the bike? No crash. No, never crashed. And okay, great. And then there you have it.
Right. Well, I mean, like I mentioned, it rode great.
Mm-hmm.
And these are the kind of things that, I hear about, and I always want to like yell from the mountaintops to folks, like, they don't matter if you like the bike.
That's true.
Right?
That's 100. You're 100% right. And let's remember the great trip Michelle and I had on there touring around Europe.
Right. Yep. It's still a great motorcycle. It's got some quirks to it.
Yep.
Most people walking down the street wouldn't
notice it.
Even notice. I think I mentioned to you, almost every gas stop on this trip, someone came over and complimented the bike.
Okay, good.
So it's still a looker. It still turns heads. I had tons of people like seek me out when it was parked outside of the Airhead, Air Central area, to ask questions about it, because you just don't see that color very often.
No, you don't.
And then they start looking a little bit closer, which I thought was really fun, knowing what was wrong with it, and the things that people had questions about, right? Like, well, why does it have a kickstart? And, I've never seen a green bike like this with the big tank,
Yeah.
Are those side gauge pods? Did that come stock? Those kind of questions. Because it's just, if Airheads, it's just a little bit unique enough that it starts to ring alarm bells in your brain as to wait,
good point.
What is that bike?
Good point. Yeah, you're right. You don't see the Kickstarter on there a lot, and somebody added the auxiliary gauges, which was nice. The clock amazingly still works.
It still works. It was ticking
Keeps
all
great
weekend.
Time.
And I got to try to figure out how many miles per hour I was driving all weekend with the kilometers per hour. I posted a video riding with from my 360 camera, just a quick one on Instagram, I think yesterday or the day before, and I was just terrified because you could see the top of the Speedo in the shot, and I'm like, people are going to think I was driving way too
100
fast.
miles an hour, yeah.
But no one's commented yet, so they must have realized what it is.
Okay, good.
Anyway, so that's the contest that didn't really end up being a contest, but we had some prizes there. I handed off the prizes to Greg, the Tennessee Air Marshal, who was kind enough to offer me that wheel for such a great price. He was running around all weekend like crazy, cleaning up after everybody and making sure there was beer in the coolers and food being
important.
cooked. Yeah. I watched him drive off in his pickup truck several times to run home to get supplies. So I told him, either you can keep this stuff or you can give it to whoever helps you clean up the most.
There you go. That's fine.
So
that's legit.
So I hope you're enjoying that stuff, Greg, or maybe you handed it off to somebody who was deserving of it. Either way, it's in good hands, I'm sure. Anyway, that's really all we have for today. We're going to play that video I mentioned. In this video, like I said earlier, it's some of the trip there from the 360 camera. It's some photos I took of bikes around the rally site. And I did manage to get one quick interview with a younger guy.
Okay, good.
We keyed in on him because he also had a Nuremberg green bike, but he had a Nuremberg green toaster.
Oh, that's a little different. I think it's a slightly different shade.
Yeah, it was definitely a different shade, but it's close. But he parked it right next to the green machine at the Air Central route, at the Air Central area.
Good.
And so we were oogling it and comparing it to the green machine, and bumped into him, and quickly got a quick interview in. So that'll be part of this video as well. That's really what we've got today. I just want to say thank you to the MOA for having me there, for putting me up in a hotel room for the weekend. And thanks to everybody who came and said hello. We did like a little bit of a seminar about the podcasts, and there was some just really great things people had to say. And it just felt really great to hear from all of you. Loved hearing your comments and everything about the show. And to the fellow who commented and complimented me on all of my hats, I thought I would throw you for a loop today and not wear one, but the hat will come back next episode.
There you go.
Anyway, so thanks everybody. All the links that we need to have will be in the description.
Right.
Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.
one side and down the other with each revolution around the arena wall. You'll next be entertained by the man on the motorcycle, Bobby Frankenstein out of Buffalo, New York. Young Frankenstein's gonna be...
All right, so we got Cal here. We're at Air Central, and he's got an R75/5. He's going to tell us about it. Cal, tell us a little bit about this bike. Where'd you find this bike?
Yeah, you know, I first off, my father-in-law is a longtime Airhead member, huge BMW guy for years. I married my wife about 8 years ago. I got into these bikes, kind of bonding with the family there. But I actually, one of my great friends, Kevin, I'm from Minnesota.
Okay.
He's a huge Airhead fan, BMW guy. He has a collection of bikes up there, and he actually gifted me this bike. So I'm super honored to have this bike. I don't deserve it, but you know, it's fun to come to these things and show off the bike a little bit and try to learn from people about the history of these and the nostalgia. But I'm just a huge fan of the brand and, you know, the whole look of these bikes, and you know, it's just, I just think they're the coolest. So.
They're great, and I love that you parked it right next to Daren's bike here. We've got two green bikes lined up here. Obviously, he's got the toaster tank on R75/5, but same color. You were telling me a little arlier that the color means something to you. So what's the color mean to you?
Well, these are my high school colors. Mounds View High School in Arden Hills, Minnesota.
Okay.
But my buddy has a whole fleet of these bikes, and they're all black except for this one. He had this green one, and he knew I admired that, and I was like, look, that's my high school color. Then one day he let me take it. So
and he just gave it to you.
Yeah, it was amazing.
Wow.
But no, I'm just humbled to be able to.
And how long ago was that he gave it to you?
Probably 6 years ago.
6 years.
Yep. So
6 years, very cool.
And I've been out to the Airhead events probably 3 or 4 times. I also hosted an event in Nashville, Tennessee, a couple of years ago at one of my warehouses. So
nice. Do you know Parker Zamorelli? He's in Nashville. He just won the custom bike award.
Oh, I didn't know.
Yeah, you should definitely check him out. He built a really, really sweet bike and won first place at the rally. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, and he's a Nashville guy. So
yeah,
you should link up and maybe you guys do some rides together.
Yeah, we should.
Build bikes.
Yeah. But yeah, shout out to my father-in-law Roger Watkins. He's in Florida, Newport Richey.
Okay.
So he's the whole reason I'm here. So definitely an inspiration behind the bike as well. So
very cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, it's a beautiful bike. I'm gonna just do a little walk around for everybody real quick here. I'll have to kind of come around the long way. And that's all we got. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Yeah.
Thanks for joining us on the Short Wheelbase Podcast, presented by the BMW Motorcycle Owners of America. To join the club, visit bmwmoa.org. You can find full-length episodes of the excerpts heard here on the Airhead 247 podcast. The Short Wheelbase Podcast is produced and edited by Nick Malozzi. Audio segments by Jeff Glover. You can check in with Nick at Airhead Misfits on Instagram.